Hi, I'm GC, your friendly Kapitbahay, and welcome to our YouTube channel. For today's video, we are gonna talk about the assumed balance or pasalo. A less conventional way of buying a property involves a process called loan assumption or pasalo, a term that refers to assume in Tagalog. For those who aren't very familiar, pasalo literally translates to assume, meaning bearing someone else's debt. Believe it or not, pasalo or assumed balance may actually prove beneficial for you, especially when you're looking for a good deal in the property market. On the flip side, sellers can score some really good financial perks in this transaction. Here's what you need to know about loan assumption, assumed balance, or pasalo. What is house for assume? A house for assume or pasalo house and lot is a property that is sold in the middle of its term loan. If you are buying a property that is labeled as nakasanla, which is mortgage in Tagalog, then it means that the property already has an approved mortgage and the current owner has already started paying for it. Essentially, you're assuming the balance on the mortgage. In an assumed balance house and lot, the house is under a specific loan agreement and the buyer will have the privilege to pay the pasalo house and lot according to the financial arrangement agreed upon by the seller and the lender. All factors such as interest rate, repayment period, and monthly amortization will remain the same when the property is transferred to the buyer. How pasalo, assumed balance, works. The way the pasalo house and lot process works is as if you're taking on the mortgage payment from someone else, and at the same time, paying the actual selling price of the property. For instance, the value of a certain home is 5 million pesos, with an outstanding mortgage balance of 2 million pesos. Depending on your negotiations with the seller, you may be able to get the house for only 1 million pesos or so, as you assume the responsibility of paying the debt of 2 million pesos to the creditor for the next months or years. Once the title is successfully transferred to you, the former owner will be free from loan obligations as you assume balance. Assume balance house and lot process. When buying a pasalo house and lot, through a loan assumption, there are various things you need to consider to ensure that the property title will be legally transferred to you upon full payment of the remaining balance. Here are elements you need to carefully assess before buying an assumed balance house and lot. Contracts are the trickiest and most important document that needs to be scrutinized when buying a property, especially if it is an assumed balance property. Many legal battles arise from erroneous clauses, which is why a contract of assignment, or deed of assignment, should be perfected along with the contract to sell agreement with assumed balance to impose the transfer of obligation to pay, and the rights on the property upon fulfillment of the obligation. The contract to sell agreement with assumes balance contains the same provisions except for a few changes. A contract to sell of an assumed balance should contain an agreement between the seller assignor and the buyer assignee through an indemnify and hold harmless clause. This clause means that the seller is transferring all the responsibilities to the buyer. Lender, when buying a pasalo house and lot, knowing the lending institution in which the house is under a loan contract is imperative, as lending institutions have different requirements. An example is pag-ibig. In a pag-ibig assumed balance, the buyer should also meet the qualifications for a housing loan such as being a pag-ibig member with at least 24 months of contribution and meeting the salary requirements for the house loan. Additional requirements: lending institutions may require additional requirements when transferring a house loan to a new owner such as a notarized notice. In pag-ibig assumed balance, the seller is required to present a notice of assignment of contract. The notice of assignment of contract is addressed to pag-ibig and is a formal declaration of the transfer of rights from one party to another. Make sure that the seller has submitted a notice of assignment of contract to pag-ibig to prevent issues with ownership upon completion of payment. Why choose to assume balance? The first reason people choose this route when buying a property was already mentioned early on: better costs. Usually, such homes for assumed balance come with a price lower than the market value for different reasons. In some cases, sellers want to dispose of property fast, so they tend to be more flexible when it comes to pricing. In other cases, the asset has simply depreciated in value over time, and therefore isn't comparable to other new offerings in the market. Another financial benefit in assuming the balance is the promising interest rates. In most instances, the assumed interest rate is lower than the current rates. Do take note that the creditor's permission is still necessary before the transfer, as the law prescribes. More than abiding by the regulations, involving the creditor is important for practical reasons. They need to know who holds the title and pays the monthly obligations after the sale. The bottom line is, the buyer gets significant savings in assumed balance or pasalo. You can use it to renovate the property and achieve your dream home or sell it yourself for a more competitive price. As for sellers, assumed balance or pasalo is beneficial for dire financial situations, such as when you're not able to pay for the current mortgage anymore and you need instant cash. With loan assumption, you get to be free from obligations and at the same time, pool your resources. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to be updated to our next video.